What's up, you guys? Do you notice something a little bit different? A little obvious, a little bit different. I have a little bit of a different set of eye candy, accessories on eye candy. I don't even, okay, anyways, I digress. So what's up, y'all? Rewind, let's start fresh. Before we dig into this week's podcast, can we just take a minute to get excited as your girl is for what is resting on my head right now. This was by far, hands down, one of the best Amazon purchases that your girl did when Amazon was having their special sale. I don't think it was like Prime Day. I don't know. Maybe it was Prime Day. I don't know. All I know is that I, at the time, was out of state with my new friend. We were sharing a room together, my little bunkmate. And shout out to Shelly because she reminded me about the Amazon sale because I was able to get these. How freaking cool are these? I'm not as big of a gamer as I used to be. But this definitely is inspiring me to get back into like the gaming world. And can we just like peep the fit as far as the side? Oh, and I'm not going to bother with it because I feel like I'm just going to mess it up. But just so y'all know, there are multiple light settings on this headset. Multiple. Also, there's a setting on here, no joke about it, where it is like strobe light, multicolored. But I figured if I'm recording the podcast, I'm not going to do that to y'all because I don't know who is watching me that may have an episode and I want to respect that. So, for now, you're just gonna have to love the purple. I'm not even gonna lie, I secretly want to turn the lights off right now. Maybe that might be like my photo that I take for this podcast. So, anyways, enough scrolling for the day. I hope you guys have had an incredible day. It is officially Monday, and I don't know if you're catching this now or catching this later, but I hope you're having a good week so far, good day, and if not, hopefully it turns around and gets a little bit better. I'm going to be fully transparent with you guys. I, in my heart of hearts, did not want to do this podcast today. It is Monday. It is not only Monday, but I'm in a little bit of a funk. And I know that sometimes if you know me, if you met me in person, my personality is very outgoing. I am overall a very happy person, but today marks 1 year since Bella, my sweet Bella, has passed. I do keep a photo of her in my office. This is Bella. Sorry, I have my ring light on. There we go. That's Bella, my little Scentsy buddy, partner in crime. I'm going to move that back a ways because honestly, I feel like if I just keep staring at it, this is not going to be a podcast. It's just going to be you guys watching me cry. And that's for TikTok. So anyways, let's get into this week's podcast. Also, I just want to say that on a side note that if you are like myself and you are mourning grieving somebody, whether it's human form, pet form, whatever the case may be, they're all family members as far as I'm concerned. I don't have any kids. We are a human kid-less household. But our fur babies are our kids. We, as y'all, if you've been following me for a while, my husband and I have been down the road of infertility, that journey. We've closed pretty much the chapter on that, and we're focusing fully on our foster kitten. In fact, I don't even know if I've mentioned them recently, because it has been a little while since I've been on doing this podcast, but if I haven't, guess what? If you didn't already know this, we did have around, when was it? Maybe August? Was it? No, it was before then. So around like July-ish, early July, we had 4 foster kittens, and then 1 found a good home, which was awesome. Sadly, the second one, where 2 of the 4 were foster fails, but that's okay because life happens. We ended up deciding to keep 2 of the 4, and then we're currently trying to find a home, a forever home. Get it? If you know, you know. Forever home for Chef. We call him, aka Chefy. aka Snuggle Bunny, Cuddly Bug. He's definitely an adventure seeker, but he loves to snuggle, and he has a thing for feet, but that's another topic for another day. Um, but we're looking for a forever home for him. So before we dig into it, if you're watching this and you're local to me, which is Galveston County, near Texas City, if you're watching this and you have somebody in mind, or if you yourself are looking to adopt a new kitty for the holiday season, get with me, message me, and we'll go from there. And if you don't mind, please, please, please pass the word along. As much as we would love, love, love to keep the third one, we're really, truly trying to find a home for him. Preferably a home that already has a cat. He's good with dogs, by the way. So a little plug-in for Sheffy. He's good with dogs. He's been around our massive dog, 120-pound, half Pyrenees, half German Shepherd of a bear. Teddy bear at that, but he's something else. He's all muscle. And yeah, and Chef's been just chilling and hanging out with Kirby, who we've had for a couple years now. Kirby, I think, is close to 4 months old, I want to say, maybe 4 months-ish old. Or 4 months? Why did I say 4 months? Sorry, y'all. That's the kittens. My bad. It's been a bit of a day. But Kirby is 4 years old. That's what I meant to say. And the kittens are 4 months old. So there we go. But this week's topic for the podcast, is therapy. Therapy for business owners. And I figured what better day, because it's Monday and I actually go to therapy weekly on Tuesdays. So I was like, you know what better way for me to introduce therapy to y'all, well, not introduce therapy, but talk a little bit about therapy, why I do it, why I feel like it's important for not only everybody, but specifically small business owners. But normally, y'all don't know this, but normally I record my podcast Tuesday evenings, Wednesday mornings, and typically it's usually Tuesday evenings right after therapy, because I'm already in like a clear headspace, and then I dive into the podcast. But you know what? I figured I just really want to take my mind off of today, and this is good. This makes me feel good, and I want to do this. So, and it's been a little bit since I've recorded the last one. So, yeah, there's that as well. But let's talk about therapy. Therapy, why it's not only important for business owners, small business owners, but therapy in general, why it's good. So, I feel like I'm going to have to take you on a little bit of a journey with my therapy, relationships with therapy, my experiences with therapy, where it all started. So one thing you may not necessarily know about me is I do have a psychology background. Bachelor's degree, maybe one day master's, put it out to the universe. But my bachelor's degree is in psychology. So I, for a very long time, even still to this day, honestly, want to at some point go back into it and then become a licensed therapist. So I have considered even doing like a life coach thing. So back in college, that is where my therapy journey started. Because I was in college, I was required to log so many hours with a therapist. I had not been to a therapist, period, since I was the only therapist I had seen prior to that. I think I was around maybe, how young was I? Maybe like 10? No, maybe a little older than that, like 12, 13, something like that, like pre-teenage basically. And that was not by choice. So my parents, because I can only speak off of what I recall. So I think my parents were like, you're acting out, you're acting different. We can't get you to obey us. Your personality's different. Maybe one day, I don't think I will, but maybe one of these days I'll ask them, why did y'all take me to therapy? But you know what's interesting is that they didn't commit to it. I think I went to this therapist one time. That's not how that works. I just want y'all to know that. Like, it's one thing if you go to a therapist and you're just not making a connection with them. But honestly, in my opinion, try out your therapist at least 2 to 3 sessions to get your feet wet before you're like, peace out, and then move on to the next thing, or just never go back to a therapist again. So that's my experience from a very young age, was like a 1-day experience with the therapist. Now, if I went to her more than once, I blocked it out of my memory, and I don't recall that. But all I do recall is the first day. And it was horrible, y'all. It was horrible. And I'm honestly surprised that I was as open-minded when I was in college to seeking out not only being a therapist, but going to school to be a therapist, right? Because that's my major. That was my major. But also the fact that I had to log hours with multiple therapy sessions, not just one. There was multiple classes that I took. There are multiple sessions that I had to take. And I'm even shocked thinking back on it even right now, honestly, with y'all, that I was so open to the fact of going to a therapist because of my lack of experience and not so great situation from when I was a kid. So whenever I was in college, I started out with your basic run-of-the-mill therapist, right? And I know that I started attending a little bit more detailed classes. So there was like child development. There was, I want to say there was like a family type psychology, then human sexuality course. So as I was trucking along in each of these classes, there was a different type of therapy session that I basically went to. Now granted, I don't think we necessarily had to like switch it up as often as I did, but I feel like I think I was trying to get a feel of where I wanted my focus to be if and when I continued on to get my master's. So I feel like that's more likely where my headspace was if I could try out these different therapy sessions and therapists, maybe it would help me pinpoint like which of my areas of study I wanted to be in. That's the only thing I can assume. The upside to it is that I was able to get a little bit of a sample of each scenario of what it would feel like to be in that different type of environment, different type of therapist. And it doesn't fit all. Like one therapist doesn't fit all. So my advice to you, if you're watching this and you're like, you know what? I've been to a therapist before, whether it was like 5, 10, 15 plus years ago, or recently. It was a horrible experience. I didn't connect with my therapist. Guess what? Take it from somebody that has had experience in this area, that it's going to take more than one therapist, and not one size doesn't fit all. So one therapist doesn't fit all. So I'm so sorry. And I really feel for you, honestly, true heartedly, if you had a really bad experience with your therapist, because nobody should ever have to have that, period. But if you're like myself, I remember right out the gate after I graduated high school, I knew because of some things that were unlocked personally through my college courses for me, a lot of like past trauma that was unlocked mentally that I was definitely not prepared for. I knew when I graduated college that the most important thing for me was to actually seek out a licensed therapist outside of college that I wasn't logging and getting hours for, that I could personally go to. So if you are in the kind of headspace of like, you're like, Megan, okay, like I want to go to a therapist, but I just don't know where to start. So my advice to you, 2 things that can really help. If you're wanting to go on the more practical, professional way, if you do have insurance, or you are under somebody that's carrying you with their insurance company, that is one way that you can technically go about it, is that you can pull up online your insurance website, and then from there it'll show you like which therapists would accept your insurance. The other side to that is that you could search therapists in your area. Honestly, the more info that you put into like Google, the better you'll be. Like if there's a specific, if there's something that you're wanting to get more information about, or something that you're struggling with, then I would recommend going to a search engine like Google, typing in those keywords, and then like therapists in my area. One really important thing too that I highly recommend is that, let's just say you finally find a page, you finally find a link where there is a therapist in your area, and you're just like, I just don't know how this works. What's the next step? From there, I do recommend checking out their website. A lot of therapists, majority of professional therapists, will have sites that you can check out where it's going to show you their credentials. It's going to show you to the T, like where they went to college, what their focus is, as far as with their practice, how long they've been practicing for. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the extent of it. And like I said, it's a trial basis. And I know it sounds like maybe the way I'm saying it is just so lighthearted. Like, try a therapist, have fun, just try it out. Like a new pair of shoes, just try them on. Not the case at all. I feel like that everybody, like I said before, everybody truly needs therapy, in one form, fashion, or another. However, I do feel like that there are a lot of individuals out there, and we're only human, right? So we're going to have our reservations as far as, is therapy right for me? how's this going to go? Like for me personally, just going back to where I was whenever I was right in college, there was a specific psychology session, therapist session that I was in, and the therapist that I was seeing outside of college, she was like, you know what? Her and I, for some reason, like we were not, like I would show up to my session and I could just physically tell that I had like a wall up because I was masking. And I have masked since I was little. Like since I was a little kid, I have masked. And I know that it was a learned behavior coming from being in a family environment that was highly unpredictable, right? So because I grew up in an environment that was highly unpredictable, that's where I feel like where my masking started. And then also I almost got to where I mastered it, not only while I was in school, but then as I got older. And then it got to where when I started to go into these therapy sessions, I was still masking. And you know what? I feel like to an extent it is a bit of a gift, but at the same time, because of the environment that I was raised up in, because of the way I was raised, I wasn't really self-aware of how deep, far down I had stuffed trauma, emotions, sadness. I mean, I guess it falls under emotions, but just trauma, emotions, things that I had been through, memories that I put aside, experiences that I had throughout my childhood. All of that was just like stuff deep down, deep down. And I wasn't even really self-aware of it, which was interesting. And until I started getting to therapy. So whenever I started seeing my very first therapist, I remember I think we met once a week. And for the first 2-3 weeks, I would show up. And it was just very robotic. Like I would go in, I would be like, oh, good afternoon. How are you? Oh, I'm fine. So what's going on today? And I wasn't like word vomiting to her, right? Like I was just, like I said, masking. So it was very like, no emotion was here. And I was very just checked out. And I just remember like, it was small talk, right? Like we all know about small talk. It's the awkward conversation or lack of their conversation that we have whenever we're crossing paths with someone in the hallway that we just don't really want to dive deep into, right? So you're passing somebody like a coworker right in the hallway and you're like, hey, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. How was your weekend? Oh, it was good. Oh, how was yours? Oh, it was good. All right, see you later. That's basically how my therapy session was. And I was so glad that as the professional, as my therapist was, the professional in her, within like 2-3 weeks in, right out the gate, was like, Megan, look, we're not getting anywhere. You and I are not connecting. I feel like that she didn't really accuse me of having a wall up, but she's like, I just don't know if I can do anything for you. And I thought that she was going to leave me there. She was going to leave me hanging. She was like, however, I'm starting up a group therapy session, all women, group therapy, and I want to see if maybe you're open to the idea of attending this group therapy session. And I'm not going to lie, like at first I was like, yeah, no, like I'm uncomfortable opening up to you. I know I'm going to be uncomfortable opening up to even more strangers than just you. And I just don't do well in group settings. Like, I just don't do well. But you know what? I told her, I said, let me think about it. I'll get back with you tomorrow. Because I think that she said the following week was when they were going to start it up. And I said, let me get back with you tomorrow. Let me sleep on it. And then I'll let you know. So I thought it over. The night passed. The next day came. At that point, I knew in my gut, y'all, that I was embarking on a season of my life where there was a lot to unpack. There was a lot to unpack. And it was just like knots in my stomach, constantly having acid reflux because of the stress, not really being able to like focus. There was a lot of just stuff happening up here mentally. And I just didn't know like left from right, up from down. And I feel like that I was just kind of like going through the motions and just barely surviving. So at that point, I know in my personal life, it's when I would go back to and refer to when I hit my rock bottom. And when I hit my rock bottom, that's when I knew. I was like, you know what? I'm desperate at this point. And if a therapist that I trust and I thought I was going to connect with can't get through to me, I was desperate. So I texted her that next day and I said, you know what, count me in for the group sessions. And it just took off from there. The group therapy sessions were not as easy at first because we did dive into talking and walking through like past behaviors, whether it was like our family dynamics, the role that we individually played with our family, yeah, and that kind of stuff. And I remember like the very first thing right out the gate was like all I could think about was the way I was raised, and it was that personal family things stay in the house. We do not talk about these things outside the house. What happens in our house stays in our house, and we just leave it there, right? And however we feel, whatever the emotions are, we stuff them deep down, because if we're emotional, it means if we're showing any kind of emotion, it means that we're erratic, that we're being dramatic, that we don't have control of ourselves. It's a sign of weakness. I don't know if you're listening to this and you can relate. Can I get an amen? Because that's what I grew up in. So being in a group session, y'all, with about, I think it was like 6 or 7 other women, mind you, that I never met before, all different forms, different walks of life, different age ranges, never met them before in my life. And we had, thank goodness, my therapist had like this book, like this study book guide that we had that was helping us kind of like go along. And I remember like we would take it home one week, we would have some homework, we would come back the next week, and then we would discuss like what we wrote in our book if we wanted to share. And that was one of the best things I could have done for myself, because I not only at that point, I feel like thus began my journey of not only like self-help, but diving deep into the icky, not so, what did I used to say? It was like the dark, deep, icky crevices, like of my past, of my experiences, upbringing, you name it. And I feel like that it's been a journey, because looking back on it, it's not like I purposely planned on let's dive into how you were raised and your family dynamic and how that connects to who you are now as a young adult. I did not purposely do that, but I'm just so freaking glad that it went the way that it went, because looking back on that, because so I'm 36 now, right? I just turned 36 this past September. And I think I started officially started my therapy journey. I would say probably about like 20 years old, 2021, something like that. And I would say probably for about around 2021 years old, I was in and out of different types of therapies. What do I want to say? Like different types of therapists. Maybe that's the way you say it. But I was in and out of therapy for probably about like 4 or 5 years-ish into that time frame. But I can't help but feel like that my personal life and my psyche is almost like everything has just kind of been peeled back like an onion, layer by layer by layer. And like I said, it's not something, I firmly believe that it is a part of God's plan, that nothing ever happens by accident, that everything was already put in place and I'm just acting out as we go along. But it's just so fascinating to me to think back on how it was so many years ago. I know it's not like that many years ago, but it feels like it almost feels like a lifetime for me. Mentally, right? Not like physically in age, because I know some of y'all are going to give me a hard time. You're like, you're not that old. But when I think about mentally, how much I've processed and been through and worked through, it's just really cool. It's actually freaking cool to think about. And it hasn't been easy. So like I said, the first part of my therapy sessions and in group therapy, it was really solely, it wasn't even actually about like me per se. It was really like family dynamic, identifying who that was when I first got introduced, y'all, to toxic behavior and how to identify toxic individuals. I had never even heard of that term before. So that's where I got introduced to that. And thus began, like I said, my journey of like self-discovery and just peeling back layer by layer and just working through the ickiness of what makes up Megan. And so, yeah, so then at that time I started dating someone new, And my now ex, because y'all know I'm married now, but back then, the guy I was dating was very open to therapy, which I was very shocked about because we had only been dating at that time, like I think 2 or 3 months in, and I was like, hey, my friend has this opportunity, and I think it was like what is it, like a therapy weekend, like a couples retreat weekend, and it was a 2-day event around town, not too far from where I'm at now, and I think it was like husband and wife therapist, and it was so interesting because this was like a totally different therapy dynamic, right? Because here I come from like those group therapy sessions, and I did that I think for like a couple months, and then once I felt like it just wasn't really getting anything out of it, like it just wasn't for me anymore, I took a little bit of a break. Didn't really at that time feel like that I needed any more therapy, but then that's when I was dating the new guy, and I was still hell bent on I think, yeah, because I just graduated with my bachelor's degree around that time, and I was still hell bent on getting my master's. So I was still focused on getting into the master's program. So I was like, okay, I've had all this therapy experience. What's next? Couples therapy. And you know what? I really feel for that guy that I dated because he was so open-minded. Because at that time, funny enough, at that time, because him and I dated for, I want to say close to 5 years, maybe 4.5 years, 5 years. And when we were like we were fresh, y'all, fresh dating, fresh boyfriend, girlfriend, couple months in. And I was like, you know what? What's next? What other therapy session have I not been into? And like I said, it was couples therapy. So I asked him, I said, hey, I know you and I really don't, right now, we're just getting to know each other. So we really don't have any issues. I'm not going to say at all, but no issues right now because we're just getting to know each other, right? We're just so fresh. We were in that like lovey-dovey phase. But I said, hey, I'm wanting to at some point get my master's degree. At the time I was considering couples counseling, sex therapy, couples counseling. And I was like, you know what? What do you think about going to this couples retreat? It's with a 2 therapists, husband and wife, and their couples therapist, and we could just try it out. It'll be interesting. What do you say? And he was freaking open-minded, y'all, because he was like, you know what? Yeah, why not? Let's just try it out. And I think in his mind, it was like, oh, it's like a little weekend getaway, a little trip, a little mini vacation. That's what I really feel like he was truly focused on. But once again, we got out of our comfort zone. We tried something new, and I don't regret it. Again, I just know that a lot of people have had, again, not so hot experiences, again, with therapy, let alone a couples therapist. But this was different, y'all, because I had never heard of a couples therapist they were husband and wife. I never heard of that dynamic before because I usually find that you either get one person or another. It's just like a single individual, right? Therapist for couples, not husband and wife, dynamic duo. But it was a really cool experience over the weekend. And once again, it tapped into family dynamics and family upbringing and communication skills and how to communicate and talk to each other, like when a problem arises, or if you have a hard situation that you need to walk through, or how to express your feelings. That was a big one, right? And that was really truly where him and I at the time like self-discovered within ourselves, like, okay, this was my family upbringing, this was his family upbringing, and being able to kind of like reflect on those and how different it was, and then also how similar. And then I know that at that time, one of the really cool key takeaways that I took from that weekend that has stayed with me to this day is the reference that the husband had made, and the male, like what he had said was that whenever I'm a huge visualization person, right? Like I love stuff like that. So when he said like his way of expressing, like when you're in therapy and you're working on things, and the things that you're working on, it's not necessarily saying like you're going to forget it altogether, but you're working through it and you're putting it behind you, right? Because once you've worked through it, there's no point in wallowing in it, right? Because you've worked through it, you're processing it, but put it behind you like the past. So his his imagery that he used, which was really cool, is basically like if you think about when you're sitting in your car and you're looking in the rearview mirror and you see the vehicle or you see the scenery behind you in the rearview mirror, right? And it's behind you. And what happens is that you do want to casually like glance in there, right? For safety reasons. You want to glance in that mirror, but you don't want to focus on it. So I thought that was so cool because he was using that a way of saying your past is in your past. You don't want to focus on it per se, but it's okay every now and then to reflect back on it. Reflect back on it, right? I just thought that was so cool. And that has stayed with me since then. And I swear to y'all, every time I'm in my vehicle and I'm looking in the rearview mirror, I hear him like Jiminy Cricket in my ear every single time. Or anytime that a trigger happens and it takes me back to something that happened to me in my past. Same thing. I think about that. And I'm like, it's in the past, Megan. The past is in the past. And you know what? What did I learn from that? Why am I being triggered right now? And I give it just a little bit of time. I don't necessarily take a deep dive. It's not a rabbit hole for me, but I give it just a little bit of time to be like, that was interesting. And mentally, I take a note of it. And I'm like, you know what? Is this something that I have the right kind of headspace for? I'm in a good place mentally to be able to process this and figure out why. Can I pinpoint why it triggered me? Why this memory came back to me all of a sudden and flooded my mind? Or otherwise, it's like, ooh, now is not a really good time. So we're going to put a pin in that. And then maybe come back and then readdress it some other time. So I just thought that was pretty cool. So I think that about that time, that wrapped up that season of my life where I don't think I saw anybody else after the couples therapist. I want to say, I think that's pretty much where I was like, okay, I feel good. I'm fine. I'm at a better place. And I just didn't really feel like I needed a therapist anymore. Right. So flash forward to X amount of years until about 3 years ago. I was like, you know what? I found myself really turning towards my friends for advice. I was turning towards my friends for advice and I was asking them about personal things that was happening, not only in my own personal life, but then within my marriage. And I was like, you know what? I really don't need to turn to my friends per se for advice because I really need somebody that's like an outlier, somebody that is really like, know me, personally like that can help me like in the now. And I know what y'all are going to say, and it's definitely what I told myself over and over, because I go to God all the time with what's going on with me personally. I stay in prayer. I stay prayed up. I stay in prayer with the things that are personally going on with me. And nothing against that, and I totally support that, because for one, this is a big part of what this podcast is about, right? It's prayer, faith, and I was definitely doing that, but I needed something in a physical form to be able to just process and talk things out with, right? And when I approached my therapist about 3 or so years ago, I'm not gonna lie, like I first approached it in a way of like, oh, my husband and I we really need this. So I wanted to get a feel for it and just see like if she was a good fit for my husband and I. What was interesting, come to find out, was that I needed more of like a therapist for myself, not as much of like a couples counselor at that point. And thus began my journey. Like I said, almost, I think a little over 3 years now, I want to say. I might be wrong about that time frame, but about 3 years, give or take, that I've been seeing my therapist. And you know what? What's interesting for me and tying into this week's podcast subject, as far as why therapy is good for you if you're a small business owner, is that, you know what? I see my therapist every Tuesday. And like I said, going on over 3 years now. And I just don't know if I'm ever going to not see my therapist. Because it is the best thing I could have ever done for myself. Because when I started seeing her, I guess I was a business owner, but I really was doing it casually because I also had, outside of being a Scentsy business owner, I also had my full-time job outside of the home. And at the time, I really didn't have a whole lot to express to her about being a business owner because I wasn't really working it like I do now. And I feel like that it has tremendously helped me, though, over the last couple of years to be able to show up. And every week is going to be different for me. So there are some weeks where I'm having a really tough, hard time. And it's just going to be one of those sessions that it's emotional. It's going to be physically, emotionally exhausted. And then there's other weeks that I find that her and I connect on so many different levels that it's just a good time. And I'm able to like have fun with the session and celebrate with her and laugh. And like we talk about anything and everything. And we've created this like, almost like this friendship in my therapy sessions. And, you know, it was a bit of a rocky start when I first started out of college seeking a therapist and figuring out what type of therapist do I want to see? What, you know, is it the person? Is it their area of specialty that's going to be, you know, connecting with me? I don't know. But like, it's been a journey, y'all. And I find that on a week-to-week basis, showing up in my therapy sessions, especially when it specifically comes to talking about all things business, is that it helps so much, y'all, to talk to somebody that is not in any way connected whatsoever to the business that I'm in. So even though she loves the products, right? She loves fragrance. I mean, who doesn't love fragrance? Let's be honest. But she doesn't really, I don't know, it's just kind of hard to describe, but it's like, I feel like that when I'm talking to a friend that's in the same line of work that I'm in my business, that we can connect in a way of bouncing ideas off of one another. But I feel like that those that I talk with and I bounce ideas off of and we help each other out with, I feel like that to a certain extent, I'm limited to the resources that I have with them because we're all busy, right? We're all busy as business owners. We're all busy in our personal lives. And I feel like I just don't get the amount of time that I really want and need from my individual friends. And there's nothing wrong with that because I have to respect their privacy. I have to respect their time and their energy. And that's why we have apps like Marco Polo, right? And that's why we're texting back and forth. And that's why we make lunch dates, video chats, and all the things. But the fact that I get to sit down with somebody for 1 whole hour every week and have her undivided attention, y'all, no freaking interruptions. And you know what? If you're watching this video and you're one of my good friends and you're like, I think she's talking about me. Interruptions are fine, right? Because we have customers, we have family members. Some of my friends have kids, you know, we have spouses, whatever the case may be. We have obligations outside of our businesses, and there's nothing wrong with that. But just the fact that I have somebody for a full freaking hour, y'all, that I can talk to about anything and everything and bounce ideas off of her. And I can share my wildest dreams and thoughts and these outlandish, crazy concepts in my business. And hell, this podcast, first off, my therapist and I shared it. I think I brought it up to her well over a year ago. Because I kept telling her about how I was so proud of myself for recording the trainings with my team and learning how to upload it here to YouTube. And I said, you know what? It's not serving me anymore. And I don't necessarily want to get rid of this YouTube channel, but I just want to do something different. And I remember listening to several leaders within our company that were doing something very similar and taking a spin on their YouTube channel. And they were making it into their very own podcast and making it personal. And I was so freaking inspired. And over the last year or two, I was so inspired to where I was like, I'm going to do it. And I kept telling myself, and I wasn't putting any action behind it. But you know what? Looking back on it, I realized that until I was fully committed to where I was like, you know what? I'm going to create this channel. I'm going to see it through. I'm going to make it happen. And I feel like until it was like in my every being to where I was just so excited and so ready for it, I just didn't want to do it because I was like, you know what? I don't want to half-ass it. I don't want to just start something, maybe do like 1 or 2 and then just drop off the face of the earth. Because it's been a journey. I'm not gonna lie. It's been a journey because it got to where I was like, in the very, very beginning, I was doing it just for me. And then after a little bit, because I think we're going on maybe almost a year now, I want to say, of doing it, almost a year. And I feel like that I'm just getting my feet wet. I'm just getting started. And I was so excited to kind of finally find my niche, right? Because I was like, okay, I want to do this podcast. I want to stay on YouTube. Eventually, I want to stay on YouTube here, but then eventually I want to figure out and train and teach myself into this next year of how I can do like save the audio recording and upload it through something similar to like Spotify or something, another platform similar to that. Because I just love y'all listening to podcasts. I love, there's so many people, different variety of people that I follow here on YouTube that I've subscribed to. And not only that, but then listening to certain podcasts on Spotify as well. And it's just so encouraging and uplifting. And I just look forward to it. And so going back to my therapy sessions, like, I just think it was so cool because I remember a year ago talking to her and I was like, you know what? I really think something's here. Like, I really want to do a podcast. I've been playing around with the idea and I just love so much that not every session, but every now and then she'd be like, so how's that podcast going? And it was almost like a ADHD reminder because, if you know, you know. And I eventually was like, you know what? I'm going to freaking do it. And I just thought it was so cool because just recently, you guys, I actually had my own coasters printed out. That's how committed I am. I had my own coasters printed out. And I also have to my left here a poster that I need to get a custom frame for. And I'm putting it here in my office. Okay. Like, that's how committed I am because this is just so much fun. And the further along I go, I'm having friends that are coming on being guests on my podcast. My husband not too long ago was on my podcast with me, which was really cool. I'm so glad that he had his moment with me for a while. That was so much fun. I know it wasn't easy for him, but I do appreciate it because that was just so cool to kind of switch things up. But I just highly recommend a therapist, y'all, especially specifically if you're a small business owner, because not only for your mental health, but when you're your own boss, I feel like you just don't have anybody else when you are your own boss to vent to talk about concepts with, to have and to have be on this journey of like the ups and downs. Because when you are your own boss, you have to create your own structure, right? You have to set your own hours. You have to set boundaries, limitations. You may have a team. Like, I have a team that looks to me for guidance, for help, for understanding, whether it's business wise, whether it's just to be of a sound mind to them, a friend. It's a lot because, especially because this, was a couple days ago, I freaking celebrated 5 years, y'all, with being a small business owner, with being an independent Scentsy consultant. And that's just like mind blowing to me because it just feels like just yesterday that I clicked join, that I decided to just try this out just for fun. Because again, back then I was working full time outside of the house. I work my Scentsy business now full time. I work from home full time. It's like, I've learned from others that, like, I say that at this point I'm not hireable because I don't see any other way for myself. Like, the fact that I am my own boss, I just don't see it going any other way than that. And that's my non-negotiable, is the fact that I am my own boss. But at the same time, that is one of the hardest things that I've ever, maybe second hardest things that I've ever done in my life, is to be my own boss. Because again, I have to set my own hours. There's nobody telling me to clock in and clock out. There's no one asking me what I got done for today. It's up to me. Everything. It's up to me. It's up to me to make big decisions. It's up to me to take things off the table. And that's where my therapist comes in, y'all, too. Because my therapist is an outlier, right? Just as if you're wanting to get help personally for yourself or for your partnership or your marriage, or for you and your dynamic with your children. Like, you're going to a therapist because they don't really know you, right? They're just getting to know you, but they don't really know you like your business partners do, like your friends do, like your spouse does. And I just think it's so cool, especially because, like I said, not every week is like all rainbows and unicorns, but there are weeks to where she and I, like, she can talk about maybe some of the things that she shares with me that she's working on and doing and fun things and exciting things that are happening in her life. And then I get to share about the fun and exciting things that are happening in my life. And I just think that's a beautiful dynamic, right? And I know that I'm very fortunate because not everybody has that dynamic, that relationship with their therapist. And I am just so beyond blessed, y'all. But if you're a small business owner and you are you're not really sure about the whole therapy thing, I highly recommend it. Like, just try it on. If you have a busy life, there are, like, my husband, he actually he's seen a therapist in the past, and if y'all don't know, like, he works shift work, so he stays busy. And seeing a physical therapist, like in person, like I do weekly, just doesn't work for his schedule. So he went to one of those websites and he was able to find like a virtual therapist, like the real deal, but they're able to have video chats. They have phone chats too, but mostly video chats. And it works for him because he's able to do it like when he is just getting off work or when he has some downtime at home. He doesn't physically have to leave the house to go to a actual therapist office like I do. And so it really works truly with his crazy busy schedule. So I highly recommend that. If you find that you, for whatever reason, can't physically be in person with your therapist, find somebody to talk to, specifically a professional therapist. I highly, highly recommend it, y'all. I can't even recommend it any more than that. It's just worked wonders for me. And like I said, I don't see any other way. I don't really see, I mean, of course it could be at one point, you know, towards like, okay, well, we've hit the end of the road and, you know, our time has been great. But I just don't see that happening anytime soon, especially because I just get so much out of it on a weekly basis. And it's so good to me because I could just be raw and honest with my therapist and talk about the highest of highs in my business as being my own boss and the lowest of lows. And there's no judgment there. And I feel like that there are times when if I was to share certain things like with my own peers that are aligned in this type of industry, that the feedback that I'm going to get from them is not going to hit the same as it is for my therapist, because I feel like for her it's like very non-biased. She's still my cheerleader, but she's also going to keep it real and honest with me at the same time. And I just feel like that if I was to talk about some things with my friends, that they're not going to be like raw and 100% with me. I feel like they're going to take my feelings into consideration and they're going to process things and maybe take a little bit longer for them to get back with me. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like that like when you're just being a business owner, when you are a business owner, that there's just something different that hits different, y'all, when you have somebody in a room with you to where you can just bear it all, you can let your guard down, and you don't have to like tiptoe around anything. And yeah, so it's just all about balance. And, you know, I do still go to my friends and my best friends about things that are in my personal life and things that are going with me in my business. But I feel like the fact that I can just show up on a week-to-week basis with somebody for like a full hour and then just let's, you know, see where the session takes us. It's just freaking phenomenal. And those that have known me for more than 3 years know the difference and can see the difference and can tell the difference, but I highly, highly recommend it. So that's about it for this week, y'all. Again, if you have any questions about therapy or anything of the matter, definitely feel free to reach out and let me know. Otherwise, huge advocate for it. It's for everybody. Whether you feel like you got something going on or not mentally, let's just clear this up here. We all got stuff going on up here, right? Yeah. So y'all have an incredible week. Thanks for hanging out with me so much. Thanks. I think I said that backwards. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. Y'all have an incredible week. Until next time, don't forget to unscramble your faith and find clarity in the chaos. Y'all have a good day.